The stagecoach door swung open, and Zachary Keller watched a woman step down with her head lowered, one gloved hand clutching her carpetbag while the other pressed against her ribs, as though breathing itself caused pain. When she finally lifted her face toward the late afternoon sun of Guthrie, Oklahoma Territory, in September of 1891, Austin Garrett felt his heart stop cold in his chest at the sight of the dark purple bruise blooming across her left eye, the swelling distorting what should have been delicate features into something that made his blood run hot with fury. He had been standing outside the general store for the better part of an hour, hat in hand, stomach twisted into knots as he waited for the woman who had responded to his advertisement for a wife. 3 months of letters back and forth, each one revealing a woman of intelligence and warmth, a woman who wrote about books and gardens and the simple hope for a peaceful life. Her name was Zara, and she had written from Boston that she was 22 years old, unmarried, and willing to take the considerable risk of traveling west to marry a stranger. He was 26 himself, owner of a cattle ranch 10 miles outside of town, and so desperate for companionship that he had swallowed his pride and placed that damned advertisement in the Eastern papers. But nothing in those letters, nothing in her careful descriptions of herself, had prepared him for this. Austin stepped forward as she stumbled slightly on the wooden boardwalk, and her eyes, one nearly swollen shut, found his. There was fear there, raw and immediate, and she took a step backward before he could reach her. "Miss Keene." His voice came out rougher than he intended, and he cleared his throat, forcing himself to speak gently. "I am Austin Garrett. I have been waiting for you." Her visible eye, a striking green even in the shadow of her bonnet, searched his face as though looking for something specific. Her lips parted, then closed again, and she nodded once, sharp and quick. "Mr. Garrett." Her voice was barely above a whisper, cultured and Eastern, exactly as he had imagined from her letters. "I apologize for my appearance. The journey was difficult. The word hung between them like a lie neither was willing to challenge. Austin knew what a fist looked like when it connected with soft flesh. He had grown up with a father who drank too much and loved too little, and he recognized the particular shame in the way she held herself, curved inward as though trying to take up less space in the world. "Let me take your bag." He reached for the carpetbag, moving slowly enough that she could track his hands. When his fingers brushed hers, she flinched, and something in Austin's chest cracked wide open. "I can manage," she said, but her grip on the bag faltered, and he gently extracted it from her grasp. "I am sure you can," he said, keeping his voice low and steady, the way he would speak to a spooked horse. "But you do not have to, not anymore." They stood there on the dusty street, the stage driver unloading luggage behind them, townspeople going about their business with curious glances thrown their way. Austin knew how this looked. A mail-order bride arriving bruised and broken, a rancher too stupid or too desperate to send her straight back where she came from. Let them look. Let them wonder. Right now, the only thing that mattered was the woman in front of him who looked like she might shatter if he breathed too hard. "The Reverend is expecting us at the church," Austin said carefully. "But if you need time, if you need to rest or eat something first, we can wait. I have a room reserved for you at the boarding house if you would prefer to postpone the ceremony." Something flickered across her face, an emotion too quick to name. "You still wish to marry me? Looking like this?" The question hit him like a kick to the gut. "Miss Keene, the only thing your appearance tells me is that someone hurt you badly, and if I ever find out who, I will make them regret the day they were born." The words came out harder than he intended, and he saw her eyes widen. He took a breath, gentling his tone. "What I mean to say is that you came all this way, and I am not the kind of man to turn away someone in need. If you want to go through with this marriage, I will be honored to have you as my wife. If you do not, I will help you figure out what comes next. Either way, no one will ever hurt you again. You have my word on that." A single tear tracked down her cheek, cutting through the dust of travel, and she wiped it away quickly with the back of her hand. "I have nowhere else to go." "Then you will come home with me," Austin said simply. "After we are married, if that is still your wish." She studied him for a long moment, and he let her look, keeping his hands loose at his sides, the carpet bag hanging from his left hand. He was a tall man, broad through the shoulders from years of ranch work, with dark brown hair that needed cutting and eyes that his mother had once said were too serious for a boy. He had his father's strong jaw, but, God willing, none of his cruelty. "Yes," Zara said finally. "I still wish to marry you, Mr. Garrett." "Austin," he corrected gently. "If we are to be married, you should call me Austin." "Austin," she repeated, testing the name. A ghost of a smile touched her lips, gone as quickly as it appeared. "Then you may call me Zara." The church was a simple wooden structure at the end of Main Street, white paint peeling in places, a bell tower that leaned slightly to the left. Reverend Thomas was waiting inside, a kind-faced man in his 50s who took one look at Zara and ushered them in without comment. Austin was grateful for that mercy at least. The ceremony was brief. Zara's hands trembled when Austin slid the simple gold band onto her finger, a ring that had belonged to his grandmother, the only thing of value his mother had managed to hide from his father's gambling debts. When the Reverend pronounced them man and wife, Austin did not kiss her. Instead, he took her hand gently in his and said, "Thank you for trusting me." Outside the church, the September sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Austin had a wagon waiting, pulled by two sturdy horses, and he helped Zara up onto the bench seat, careful not to touch her more than necessary. She moved like someone who had forgotten how to expect kindness, and every small flinch cut him deeper than he wanted to examine too closely. The ride out to the ranch took the better part of an hour, the road rough and dusty, cutting through open prairie dotted with cattle. Austin pointed out landmarks as they went, filling the silence with information about the land, about the ranch, about anything that might put her at ease. She listened without speaking, her good eye fixed on the horizon, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "The house is not much," Austin said as the buildings came into view. "2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a sitting room. I have been meaning to add on, but I have not gotten around to it yet. There is a bunkhouse for the ranch hands, but they are out with the herd tonight, so it will just be us." "It sounds lovely," Zara said quietly, and there was something in her voice that suggested she meant it. The ranch house was small but solid, built from good lumber and painted white, with a wide porch that wrapped around the front. Austin pulled the wagon up close to the steps and climbed down, then moved to help Zara. She accepted his hand this time without flinching, though he could feel the tension in her grip. Inside, the house smelled faintly of wood smoke and coffee. Austin had done his best to clean before he left for town, but he was acutely aware of how sparse everything looked through a stranger's eyes. Through his wife's eyes. The furniture was simple and functional, most of it made by his own hands. No curtains on the windows, no rugs on the floors, no softness anywhere to speak of. "The bedroom is through there," Austin said, gesturing to a door on the right. "I will take the spare room." "You do not need to worry about me bothering you. I meant what I said outside the church. You are safe here." Zara turned to look at him, and in the lamplight, the bruise on her face looked even worse. "You would give me the main bedroom. It is your house now, too," Austin said. "Everything I have is yours. That was part of the vows, I believe." She let out a breath that might have been a laugh if there had been any humor in it. Most men would not be so generous to a woman they just met. Then most men are fools. Austin set her carpetbag down by the bedroom door. There is a basin and pitcher in there for washing. I will heat some water if you would like a bath. And I imagine you are hungry. I am not much of a cook, but I can manage eggs and bacon. I can cook, Zara said quickly. If you show me where things are, I can make supper. You have been traveling for days and you are hurt, Austin said firmly. Tonight you rest. Let me take care of things. He saw her throat work as she swallowed, more tears threatening. I do not understand why you are being so kind to me. Austin moved to the kitchen, giving her space, giving himself time to find the right words. My father was not a good man, he said, his back to her as he stoked the fire in the stove. He drank, and when he drank, he used his fists. My mother bore the worst of it for years, and I was too young, too small to stop him. By the time I was big enough to fight back, she was already gone, just gave up one day and did not wake up. I swore then that I would never raise my hand to a woman, and I would never stand by while someone else did. He turned to face her. So when I say no one will ever hurt you again, I am making a promise that I will keep, even if it costs me everything. Zara stood frozen in the middle of the room, tears streaming freely now down both cheeks. He was my stepfather, she said, the words tumbling out as though a dam had broken. My mother died 2 years ago, and he said I could stay in the house as long as I earned my keep. He started drinking more, and his temper got worse, and then he started looking at me differently. When I told him I had answered an advertisement for a wife out west, he said no decent man would want me anyway. He said I was stupid and worthless and that I would be back within a month, begging for forgiveness. When I would not change my mind about leaving, when the day came for me to go to the station, he hit me. He said it was to remind me where I belonged. Austin's hands clenched into fists at his sides, but he forced his voice to remain calm. What is his name? Why? Zara asked, fear creeping back into her voice. Because someday, if I ever find myself in Boston, I want to know who to look for. She shook her head. He is not worth the trouble. He is not worth anything. Maybe not, Austin agreed. But you are. You are worth more than he made you believe, Zara. I can promise you that much. They stood looking at each other across the small kitchen, two damaged people trying to figure out how to exist in the same space. Finally, Zara wiped her face and straightened her shoulders. I would very much like that bath if the offer still stands. Of course. Austin busied himself with hauling water from the pump outside and heating it on the stove. He filled the copper tub that sat in the corner of the bedroom, making several trips while Zara waited in the kitchen. When it was ready, he left a cake of soap and clean towels and quietly closed the door behind him. While she bathed, Austin made good on his promise of food. He scrambled eggs and fried bacon, sliced bread that he had bought in town that morning, set the table with his best dishes, which were not saying much. He heard the splash of water from the bedroom and tried not to think about his wife, naked and bruised just a few feet away. This was not how he had imagined his wedding night during all those months of correspondence. But then again, nothing about this day had gone according to plan. When Zara emerged, she was wearing a simple cotton nightgown and robe, her dark hair damp and hanging loose around her shoulders. The bruise looked darker against her clean skin, but her face had lost some of that hunted look. You did not have to go to all this trouble, she said, looking at the table. It is no trouble. Sit, please. Eat. They sat across from each other, and for a while, the only sound was the clink of forks against plates. Zara ate slowly at first, then with increasing hunger, as though she had not had a proper meal in days. Austin watched her from the corner of his eye, trying not to be obvious about it, trying to understand the strange feeling in his chest that might have been protectiveness, or might have been something more dangerous. "Tell me about the ranch," Zara said finally, breaking the silence. "Your letters mentioned cattle, but not much else." So Austin told her. He told her about the 200 acres he had saved for years to buy, about the small herd he was slowly building, about his dreams of one day having one of the biggest cattle operations in the territory. He told her about the 2 ranch hands who worked for him, brothers named Jack and Thomas Morrison, good men who knew their business and did not ask too many questions. He told her about the vegetable garden he had tried and failed to maintain, about the chickens that provided eggs but seemed determined to roost anywhere except their coop, about the mare named Bella who was so gentle she could be ridden by a child. Zara listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed she had actually paid attention. "I could help with the garden," she offered. "I used to help my mother with hers before she got sick. I know a bit about what grows well and when to plant." "I would appreciate that," Austin said. "I am afraid I do not have much of a green thumb. And I could take over the cooking, the cleaning. I want to be useful here, Austin. I do not want you to think I am just a burden you have taken on." Austin set down his fork and looked at her directly. "Zara, you are my wife now. You are not a burden and you are not a servant. If you want to cook and garden because you enjoy those things, that is wonderful. But if you wake up tomorrow and decide you just want to sit on the porch and read a book, that is fine too. You do not owe me anything except honesty." "Can you understand that?" She nodded slowly, but he could see the doubt in her eyes. That would take time to heal, he knew. Trust could not be rebuilt in a single evening. After supper, they cleaned the dishes together in companionable silence. Austin showed her where everything was stored, the rhythm of the household that she would be joining. When everything was put away, an awkward moment stretched between them as they both realized the evening was ending and sleeping arrangements needed to be addressed. "I meant what I said earlier," Austin said quickly. "You have the main bedroom. I will be comfortable in the spare room. If you need anything during the night, anything at all, just call out. I am a light sleeper." "Thank you," Zara said softly, "for everything. For not being angry about my face, for not sending me back, for giving me a chance." "You do not need to thank me for basic decency," Austin said. "That should be the minimum you expect from anyone, especially your husband." She smiled then, a real smile that lit up her face despite the bruise, and Austin felt his heart do something complicated in his chest. "Good night, Austin." "Good night, Zara." He lay awake for a long time in the narrow bed in the spare room, listening to the sounds of the house settling, of the wind moving through the prairie grass outside, of the quiet breathing from the next room. He had a wife now. A beautiful, damaged woman who had trusted him enough to travel halfway across the country, who had suffered at the hands of a man who should have protected her, who now slept under his roof and bore his name. The responsibility of that trust weighed on him, heavier than anything he had ever carried. He thought about the letters she had written, the careful penmanship, the intelligence and warmth that had shone through her words. He thought about how her eyes had searched his face for signs of cruelty, how she had flinched from his touch, how she had cried when he promised to keep her safe. He thought about the way she had smiled at the end of the evening, and how much he suddenly wanted to see that smile again. This was not the beginning he had planned, but perhaps it was the beginning they both needed. The next morning, Austin woke to the smell of coffee and frying bacon. He dressed quickly and emerged from the spare room to find Zara already in the kitchen, still wearing her nightgown and robe, her hair pinned up in a simple bun. She had found his apron and tied it around her waist, and she was humming softly to herself as she worked at the stove. "Good morning," he said, and she turned with a spatula in her hand. Good morning. I hope you do not mind that I started breakfast. I woke early and could not get back to sleep, so I thought I might as well make myself useful. I do not mind at all, though I do feel a bit guilty having my wife cook the morning after our wedding. Zara flipped a strip of bacon with practiced ease. I like cooking. It gives me something to do with my hands, and there is something satisfying about creating something nourishing from simple ingredients. She paused. My stepfather rarely appreciated it, but my mother always said I had a gift. I am sure I will appreciate it plenty, Austin said, pouring himself coffee from the pot on the stove. What you made last night, just those simple eggs, was better than anything I have managed in 6 months of trying. They ate breakfast together as the sun rose higher, painting the prairie in shades of gold and green. Austin explained his plans for the day, checking on the herd, mending a section of fence that had come down in a storm the previous week, and a dozen other small tasks that made up the endless work of running a ranch. "Can I come with you?" Zara asked suddenly. "I would like to see the ranch properly to understand what your days are like." Austin hesitated. "It is rough riding and you are still healing." "I am bruised, not broken," Zara said firmly, "and I will go stir crazy if I have to stay in the house all day. Please, Austin, let me come." He could see the determination in her eyes and found he did not have the heart to refuse her. "All right, but if you get tired or need to stop, you tell me immediately." "Agreed, agreed." Zara changed into a simple day dress and sturdy boots, and Austin saddled 2 horses, Bella for her and his gelding Duke for himself. He watched carefully as Zara mounted, ready to help if needed, but she swung into the saddle with the ease of someone who had ridden before. "My mother loved horses," she explained, catching his look. "She made sure I learned to ride properly when I was young. It has been a few years, but I think I remember enough not to fall off." They rode out together into the bright September morning, the air crisp with the promise of coming autumn. Austin showed her the boundaries of his property, pointed out where the creek ran through the eastern section, where the best grazing was, where he planned to build additional corrals next spring. Zara listened and asked intelligent questions, her face animated despite the lingering bruise. They came upon the herd around mid-morning, about 100 head of cattle grazing peacefully. The Morrison brothers were there, tall men in their 30s with sun-weathered faces and easy smiles. Austin introduced Zara as his wife, and if they were surprised by her sudden appearance or the state of her face, they had the grace not to show it. "Welcome to the ranch, Mrs. Garrett," Jack Morrison said, tipping his hat. "The boss has been talking about you for weeks. Good to finally meet you." "Good to meet you as well," Zara said warmly. "Austin tells me you both are the reason this ranch runs as well as it does." Thomas Morrison laughed. "Well, we do our best, madam, and we will do our best to stay out of your way at the house. We are not looking for a mother hen." "I was not planning to mother anyone," Zara said with a smile. "But I do plan to make sure there are decent meals available, so if you would like to join us for dinner occasionally, you are welcome." The brothers exchanged glances. "We might take you up on that, madam." "The boss here burns more food than he cooks." Austin felt his ears heat. "I am not that bad." "You are exactly that bad," Jack said cheerfully. "But do not worry, your secret is safe with us." They spent an hour with the herd, Austin showing Zara how they checked the cattle for signs of illness or injury, how they rotated the grazing areas to keep the grass healthy, the 100 small details that went into maintaining a successful operation. Zara was genuinely interested, and Austin found himself enjoying the opportunity to share this part of his life with someone who actually cared. On the ride back to the house for lunch, Zara was quiet, her face thoughtful. "What are you thinking about?" Austin asked. I am thinking that this is a good life, she said slowly. Hard work, certainly, but honest work. Clean air, open spaces, room to breathe. It is so different from Boston, from that cramped house where everything smelled like whiskey and disappointment. I am glad you think so, Austin said. I know this is not the life you were raised for. If you find it too difficult, too lonely out here, you can tell me. I would understand. Zara turned to look at him, her green eyes serious. Austin, I chose this life. I answered your advertisement knowing full well what I was agreeing to. Yes, the circumstances of my departure were not ideal, but I do not regret coming here. Please do not think that I do. Something warm unfurled in Austin's chest at her words. I am glad to hear that. The days fell into a rhythm after that. Austin would rise early and head out to work the ranch, and Zara would take over the running of the house. She cleaned every corner until the place shone, hung curtains she sewed from fabric she bought on a trip into town, planted a late-season garden that somehow managed to produce despite the cool nights. She cooked meals that made Austin look forward to coming home, hearty stews and tender roasts and pies that melted in his mouth. More than that, she made the house feel like a home. She brought wildflowers in from the prairie and put them in jars on the table. She hummed while she worked, filling the silence with music. She sat with Austin in the evenings while he read the newspaper or went over his account books, and they talked about everything and nothing, slowly learning each other's histories, preferences, and dreams. The bruise on her face faded over the weeks, the purple giving way to green and yellow before finally disappearing entirely. As the physical evidence of her injury healed, Austin watched something else heal too. Zara stopped flinching when he moved suddenly. She began to meet his eyes directly instead of looking away. She laughed more easily, smiled more often, let her guard down in increments so small he might have missed them if he had not been paying such close attention. And he was paying attention. He could not seem to help himself. He noticed the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when she was concentrating. He noticed the way she always saved the best pieces of meat for him at dinner. He noticed the way she had started waiting on the porch for him to come home in the evenings, a smile breaking across her face when she caught sight of him riding up. He noticed, and he felt himself falling in a way that both terrified and exhilarated him. This had not been part of the plan. The advertisement, the correspondence, the marriage, all of it had been about practicality. He needed a wife to help run the household, to provide companionship, perhaps eventually to give him children. She needed safety and security, a fresh start far from her past. It was supposed to be a business arrangement, nothing more. But there was nothing practical about the way his heart sped up when she smiled at him. Nothing businesslike about the way he found himself making excuses to come back to the house during the day, just to see her, just to hear her voice. Nothing sensible about the way he lay awake at night in that too-small bed in the spare room, thinking about her sleeping just a few feet away, wishing he had the right to go to her. October arrived with cooler temperatures and the first hints of frost. Austin and his ranch hands worked long hours preparing for winter, making sure the herd was healthy, stockpiling feed, reinforcing buildings against the harsh weather that would come. Zara threw herself into preserving the last of the garden harvest, filling the small root cellar with jars of vegetables and fruits, making sure they would eat well through the cold months. One evening in mid-October, Austin came home to find Zara in the kitchen wrestling with a large pumpkin. She had a knife in one hand and a determined expression on her face, and the whole scene was so domestic, so perfectly right, that he had to stop and just look at her for a moment. "Need some help?" he asked. Zara looked up, hair falling out of its pins, a smudge of pumpkin flesh on her cheek. This thing is proving more difficult than I anticipated. I wanted to make a pie, but I am beginning to think the pumpkin will win this battle." Austin shed his coat and hat and moved to the kitchen, taking the knife from her hand. "Let me. I have experience with stubborn things." He quartered the pumpkin with a few strong strokes, and Zara laughed. "Show off." "Just playing to my strengths," Austin said, but he was grinning. "What prompted the sudden desire for pumpkin pie?" "It was my mother's favorite," Zara said quietly, starting to scoop out the seeds. This time of year she would make one every week. The house would smell like cinnamon and nutmeg, and she would always save me the first slice, still warm from the oven. She paused in her work, lost in memory. "I thought if I made one, I could remember her the way she was before she got sick, before my stepfather wore her down to nothing. I could remember when she was happy." Austin set down the knife and wiped his hands on a towel. "Tell me about her." So Zara did. She told him about Catherine Keene, who had loved books and music and long walks in the rain, who had married Zara's father when she was 19 and loved him deeply until his death from influenza when Zara was 10, who had remarried 3 years later to a man named Harold Pierce, thinking he would provide security for her and her daughter, not knowing his true nature until it was too late to escape easily, who had endured years of verbal abuse and isolation, growing quieter and sadder until one day her heart simply gave out, leaving Zara alone with a man who saw her as nothing more than an inconvenience. "She sounds like she was a wonderful woman," Austin said when Zara finished. "I wish I could have met her." "She would have liked you," Zara said. "She always said the measure of a man was how he treated those who could do nothing for him. You have been nothing but kind to me from the moment we met, even though I came to you damaged and broken." She would have appreciated that. "You were not broken," Austin said firmly. "You were hurt, and there is a difference. Broken things cannot be fixed. Hurt things heal, given time and care." Zara looked at him with such intensity that he felt pinned in place. "You are a good man, Austin Garrett. I hope you know that." "I am just a man," he said, uncomfortable with the praise. "Trying to do right by his wife." "Then you are succeeding," Zara said softly. They finished preparing the pumpkin together, working side by side in the small kitchen. Zara made the pie filling and crust, and while it baked, they sat at the table with cups of coffee, talking about nothing important, just enjoying each other's company. When the pie was done, Zara cut them each a generous slice, and they ate it still warm, just as her mother used to serve it. "This is delicious," Austin said, and meant it. "Thank you for helping me make it," Zara said. "For listening to me talk about my mother. I have not been able to speak about her much. My stepfather forbade it after she died. He said dwelling on the past was foolish." "The past is what makes us who we are," Austin said. "Your mother is part of you, and you should be able to honor that however you see fit." Zara reached across the table and laid her hand over his. It was the first time she had initiated physical contact, and Austin froze, afraid to move and break the moment. "Thank you," she said simply. He turned his hand over, gently lacing his fingers through hers. "You do not need to keep thanking me, Zara." "Maybe I want to," she said. "Maybe I need you to understand how much this all means to me. The house, the ranch, the life we are building, you," the word hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Austin's thumb stroked across the back of her hand, and he felt her shiver. "Zara," he said, his voice rough, "I need you to understand something. When I married you, I thought this would be a practical arrangement, companionship, partnership, but nothing more. I thought I was too old, too set in my ways, too damaged by my own past to feel anything deeper." He paused, searching for the right words. "I was wrong. These past weeks with you, watching you make this house a home, listening to you laugh, seeing you heal, I have realized that I am falling in love with you." "No, that is not accurate," I have already fallen. I am in love with you, Zara, and I need you to know that before anything else happens between us." Zara's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "I was so afraid," she whispered. "Afraid that you just saw me as an obligation, a burden you had taken on out of pity. Afraid that I was the only one feeling this way." "What way?" Austin asked, needing to hear her say it. "Like my heart speeds up every time I hear you ride up to the house. Like the best part of my day is when we sit together in the evening and just talk. Like I go to bed every night wishing you were beside me instead of in that spare room." She squeezed his hand. "I am falling in love with you too, Austin. I think I have been since the moment you promised no one would ever hurt me again." Austin stood, still holding her hand, and gently pulled her to her feet. They stood facing each other in the lamplight, the remains of the pumpkin pie between them, the whole world narrowed down to just this moment. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. "I wish you would," she whispered. He cupped her face gently in his hands, mindful of where the bruise had been, and lowered his lips to hers. The kiss was soft, tentative, a question more than a demand. Zara's hands came up to rest on his chest, and she leaned into him, kissing him back with growing confidence. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Austin rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this right," he said. "I want to court you properly, even though we are already married. I want you to know without doubt that you are cherished and valued and loved." "You do not have to court me," Zara said, laughing softly. "I am already your wife." "But you deserve to be courted," Austin insisted. "You deserve flowers and poetry and all the romantic nonsense that goes with falling in love. The fact that we did things backward does not mean we cannot still do them properly." Zara pulled back to look at him, her eyes shining. "Then court me, Austin Garrett. Win my heart, even though you already have it." So he did. Over the following weeks, Austin courted his own wife with a dedication that would have been comical if it had not been so sincere. He brought her wildflowers from the prairie, even as they grew scarcer in the cooling weather. He wrote her poems that were terrible but heartfelt, leaving them on her pillow for her to find. He took her on picnics to pretty spots on the ranch, spreading a blanket and sharing meals under the wide Oklahoma sky. He also began sleeping in the main bedroom with her, though they took things slowly. For the first few nights, they simply slept beside each other, Austin careful to stay on his side of the bed, giving Zara space to get used to his presence. But gradually, night by night, the distance between them shrank. Zara began falling asleep with her head on his shoulder. Austin began waking with her curled against his chest. And then one night in late October, when the wind howled outside and the first snow of the season dusted the ground, Zara turned to him in the darkness and kissed him with an urgency that left no doubt about her intentions. "Are you sure?" Austin asked, even as his body responded to her nearness. "I am your wife," Zara said firmly. "I love you and I want this. I want you. Please, Austin." So he loved her gently and thoroughly, erasing with every touch and kiss the damage her stepfather's cruelty had done. Zara clung to him, gasping his name, learning that physical intimacy did not have to be about power and pain. It could be about connection, about trust, about two people choosing to be vulnerable with each other. Afterward, they lay tangled together, skin against skin, hearts beating in sync. "I never knew it could be like that," Zara whispered. "My mother never spoke of such things, and I had only heard other women whisper about their husbands' demands. I thought I would have to endure it, not enjoy it." Austin kissed her forehead. "You should never have to endure anything with me. We are partners, Zara, equals. What we just shared, that is how it should always be, both of us wanting it, both of us finding pleasure in it." "I did," she said, blushing even in the darkness. "Find pleasure in it, I mean, very much so. He laughed softly and pulled her closer. Good. Because I intend to do that again. Frequently, if you are willing. I am very willing, Zara said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. Winter settled over the ranch in earnest as November arrived, bringing with it snow and bitter cold. Austin and his ranch hands worked hard to keep the cattle fed and safe, breaking ice on water troughs, hauling feed out to the herd, checking constantly for signs of illness or injury. It was exhausting work, and Austin often came home so tired he could barely stand. But no matter how exhausted he was, he always had energy for Zara. She would have hot food waiting, a warm fire going, soft words and softer touches to ease away the stress of the day. They fell into a routine that felt as natural as breathing. Two people learning to move through life as a unit rather than as individuals. In December, Zara woke one morning feeling queasy. At first, she attributed it to something she had eaten, but when the nausea continued day after day, always worst in the mornings, realization dawned. She waited to be certain, watching for other signs before she told Austin. He came in from the cold one evening to find her sitting at the table, hands folded in her lap, a nervous smile on her face. "Is everything all right?" he asked, immediately concerned. "You look pale." "Everything is fine," Zara said quickly. "Better than fine, actually." "I have something to tell you." Austin sat down across from her, giving her his full attention. "What is it?" "I am with child," Zara said simply. "I am almost certain I have all the signs my mother told me to watch for." For a moment, Austin just stared at her. Then his face split into a grin so wide it almost hurt. "Truly, we are going to have a baby." "Truly," Zara confirmed, and then she was in his arms, lifted clear off the chair, spun around in a circle while Austin laughed with pure joy. "I am going to be a father," he said, setting her down carefully, immediately worried he had been too rough. "Are you all right? Did I hurt you?" "I am fine," Zara said, laughing at his concern. "I am pregnant, not made of glass, but yes, you are going to be a father. In late summer, if I have calculated correctly." Austin knelt in front of her, placing his hands gently on her still flat stomach. "Hello in there," he said softly. "I am your father, and I already love you more than I thought possible. I promise I will do everything I can to give you a good life, to keep you and your mother safe and happy." Tears streamed down Zara's face as she ran her fingers through his hair. "You are going to be a wonderful father." "I am going to try," Austin said. "I am going to try to be everything my father was not." The winter months passed slowly, and Zara's body changed in ways both expected and surprising. Austin was endlessly fascinated by the swell of her stomach, the way the baby would kick and move. He would spend evenings with his hand on her belly, feeling the life they had created together, marveling at the miracle of it. They talked endlessly about names, about nursery arrangements, about the kind of parents they wanted to be. Zara sewed tiny clothes and blankets. Austin started working on a cradle, carving it from good wood, making it strong enough to hold the precious cargo that would eventually occupy it. The ranch continued to thrive under Austin's management. The herd had grown, and he was able to hire 2 more ranch hands to help with the work. The house was expanded, a new room added on for the baby, with windows that looked out over the prairie. Life was good, better than Austin had ever dared to hope. But as winter gave way to spring, and spring to early summer, a shadow fell over their happiness. Austin was in town picking up supplies when he heard the news from Sheriff Matthews. A man had been asking about a woman matching Zara's description. A man from Boston who claimed to be her stepfather, who said she had stolen money from him and run away west. Austin felt his blood run cold. "When was this?" "Yesterday," the sheriff said. "He showed me a photograph, said her name was Zara Keene. I told him I did not know anyone by that name, which is technically true since she is Zara Garrett now. But Austin, I thought you should know he is looking for her. Did he say where he was staying? The hotel, last I heard. But he has been asking questions all over town. Someone is bound to tell him about you and your wife eventually. Austin thanked the sheriff and headed straight home, pushing Duke harder than he normally would. He found Zara in the garden, her hands in the soil, her stomach round with their child. She looked up when she heard him approach, and her smile faded when she saw his face. "What is wrong?" "Your stepfather is in town," Austin said without preamble. "He is looking for you." All the color drained from Zara's face. She sat back on her heels, dirt-covered hands pressed to her mouth. "No, no, he cannot be here. How did he find me?" "I do not know," Austin said, kneeling beside her. "But Zara, listen to me. You are safe. He cannot hurt you. I will not let him." "You do not understand," Zara said, her voice rising with panic. "Harold is not a man who lets things go. If he came all this way, he will not leave without me. He will say I am his property, that he has a right to take me back. Some judges would agree with him." "You are not his property," Austin said fiercely. "You are my wife. We are legally married. He has no claim on you." "But he will make my life hell trying," Zara said, tears starting to fall. "He will cause trouble, make accusations, drag your name through the mud." "I cannot let him do that to you, Austin. Maybe I should just go with him, end this before it gets worse." "Absolutely not," Austin said, taking her face in his hands. "Zara, look at me. You are not going anywhere. I meant what I said the day we met. No one will ever hurt you again. That includes him. I do not care what trouble he tries to cause. You are my wife, this is your home, and I will fight to the death to protect you if that is what it takes." A voice called out from the direction of the house. "Zara! Zara Keene, I know you are here." Austin stood, placing himself between Zara and the voice. A man was walking toward them, middle-aged and slight of build, with graying hair and cold eyes. This had to be Harold Pierce. "You are on my property," Austin said coldly. "You need to leave now." "Not without my stepdaughter," Harold said, his voice dripping with false concern. "She stole from me and ran away. I have come to bring her home." "I stole nothing," Zara said, climbing to her feet with difficulty, her pregnancy making her movements awkward. "I took only what my mother left to me, what was rightfully mine." Harold's eyes dropped to her swollen stomach, and his lip curled in disgust. "Look at you, already breeding like some farm animal. I knew you would turn out to be nothing but a common whore." Austin moved before he could think, his fist connecting with Harold's jaw and sending the older man sprawling in the dirt. "You will not speak to my wife that way." Harold scrambled to his feet, touching his bleeding lip. "You just assaulted me. I will have you arrested for that." "By all means try," Austin said. "But while you are at it, I will have you arrested for trespassing, and for the assault you committed on Zara back in Boston. I still remember what her face looked like the day she arrived. I would be happy to testify about that in court." "She is lying if she said I hurt her," Harold said quickly. "The girl is clumsy. She fell." "I am not lying," Zara said, stepping forward despite Austin's attempt to keep her back. "You hit me because I dared to leave you. You have been hitting me for years, and I have the scars to prove it. So go ahead, take us to court. Let everyone in Guthrie hear about how you abuse helpless women. I am sure that will do wonders for your reputation." Harold looked between them, calculating. "I just want what is mine, the money you took." "I took $300 from my mother's jewelry box," Zara said. "Money that my father left to her that she was saving for my future. You have no claim to it." "I am her husband," Harold said. "Everything she had became mine when we married." "And everything I have became mine when I married Austin," Zara shot back. "So even if you did have a claim, which you do not, that money is long gone. I spent it on my trip west and on supplies for the ranch. You will never see a penny of it." Austin watched Harold's face turn red with anger. "You ungrateful little wretch. After everything I did for you, giving you a home after your mother died. You made my life a living hell," Zara said, her voice shaking but strong. "You destroyed my mother with your cruelty. You made me afraid to exist in my own home. The only thing I am grateful for is that I found the courage to leave before you destroyed me too." "You are coming back with me," Harold said, taking a step forward. "I do not care if I have to drag you to the station by your hair." He never got the chance. Austin grabbed him by the front of his shirt and lifted him clear off his feet. "You are not touching her. You are not coming near her. You are going to get back on your horse, ride back to town, catch the next train east, and if I ever see your face again, I will kill you. Do you understand me?" "You cannot threaten me," Harold sputtered, but there was fear in his eyes now. "That was not a threat," Austin said quietly. "It was a promise. Now get off my land before I make good on it." He shoved Harold away, and the older man stumbled, caught himself, and stared at them both with undisguised hatred. "This is not over." "Yes, it is," Austin said. "You have no power here. You have no rights to her. She is my wife, she is carrying my child, and she is under my protection. If you try anything, anything at all, I have friends in this territory who will make sure you regret it. The sheriff already knows you are here looking for her. If anything happens to Zara, you will be the first person he investigates." Harold looked at Zara one last time. "You will regret this. You will realize what you have given up, and you will be sorry." "The only thing I regret is not leaving sooner," Zara said coldly. They watched Harold walk back toward where he must have left his horse, his shoulders tight with anger. Austin kept his arm around Zara, feeling her trembling against him. They stood there until Harold was out of sight, until the sound of hoofbeats faded in the distance. "Is it really over?" Zara whispered. "Yes," Austin said firmly. "He knows he has no legal grounds to force you back. He knows I will fight him every step of the way. And more than that, he knows you are not afraid of him anymore. Men like that, they feed on fear. Once you take that away, they have nothing." Zara turned into his chest, wrapping her arms around him as much as her pregnant belly would allow. "I was so scared. When I heard his voice, I felt like I was back in that house, small and helpless and trapped. But you are not," Austin said, holding her close. "You stood up to him. You told him the truth about what he did. That took incredible courage, Zara." "I could do it because you were here," she said. "Because I knew you would not let him hurt me, because I finally have someone on my side." "Always," Austin promised. "I am always on your side." They went into the house together, and Austin sent one of his ranch hands into town to inform Sheriff Matthews about Harold's visit. The sheriff came out to the ranch that evening to take their statements, to make sure Harold Pierce was either gone or would be strongly encouraged to leave. "He checked out of the hotel this afternoon," the sheriff reported. "Bought a ticket for the next train east, which leaves tomorrow morning. I made it very clear that if he is still in town tomorrow afternoon, I will arrest him for harassment. I do not think you will have any more trouble from him." "Thank you, Sheriff," Austin said. "I appreciate you looking out for us." "That is what I am here for," Sheriff Matthews said. "And for what it is worth, Garrett, I am glad she has you. Too many women end up trapped with men like Pierce. It is good to see one who got away." After the sheriff left, Austin and Zara sat together in the gathering darkness, not speaking, just being close to each other. Finally, Zara said, "I need to tell you something. I have not been completely honest with you about what happened in Boston." Austin tensed but forced himself to remain calm. "All right. What do you need to tell me?" "The money I took, the $300. It was not just from my mother's jewelry box. Some of it was money Harold had in a desk drawer in his study." He kept cash there for household expenses and other things. I took about $100 of it when I left. She looked up at Austin, her eyes full of guilt. So technically, he was right. I did steal from him. Austin was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Did you take any more than what he owed you in unpaid wages for all the work you did keeping his house? Zara blinked. I never thought about it that way. You should, Austin said. You said you kept house for him after your mother died, cooking, cleaning, all of it. If he had hired someone to do that work, he would have had to pay them. So in my mind, you just took what you were owed, and frankly, you deserved a lot more for what you endured. You are not angry that I lied. You did not lie, Austin said. You just did not tell me every detail, probably because you were afraid I would judge you for it. But Zara, I am not going to judge you for doing what you needed to do to escape a bad situation. You survived and you got out, and that is all that matters to me. Zara let out a shaky breath. I was so worried you would think less of me, that you would see me the way Harold did, as someone dishonest and untrustworthy. I could never think of you that way, Austin said. You are the strongest, most courageous person I know. You traveled across the country alone to marry a stranger. You rebuilt your life from nothing. You stood up to your abuser today and told him the truth to his face. That is not the behavior of someone dishonest or untrustworthy. That is the behavior of a survivor. Zara kissed him then, deep and fierce, pouring all her relief and love into it. When they finally pulled apart, she said, I love you, Austin Garrett. I am so grateful every single day that I answered your advertisement. I am the grateful one, Austin said. You have given me everything I never knew I wanted. A home, a family, a reason to be better than I ever thought I could be. Then we are both grateful, Zara said with a smile, and we are both exactly where we need to be. The summer months passed peacefully after Harold's departure. Zara grew rounder and more uncomfortable as her due date approached, and Austin fussed over her constantly, much to her exasperated amusement. He refused to let her do heavy work, insisting she rest as much as possible, ready to leap to her assistance at the slightest hint of discomfort. I am pregnant, not an invalid, Zara protested one evening when Austin tried to prevent her from carrying a basket of laundry. I know, Austin said, gently taking the basket from her hands anyway. But humor me, please. I am a first-time father and I am terrified of doing something wrong. You are doing everything right, Zara assured him. Though I will admit I am getting tired of being this size. I feel like I am carrying a small cow. A beautiful cow, Austin said, then laughed when Zara threw a dish towel at his head. In late August, on a hot afternoon when the air shimmered with heat, Zara's pains began. Austin sent one of his ranch hands racing for the doctor in town and another to fetch Mrs. Morrison, Jack and Thomas's mother, who had experience with birthing. Then he sat with Zara, holding her hand, wiping the sweat from her forehead, feeling utterly helpless as she labored to bring their child into the world. You are doing so well, he told her over and over. You are so strong. I am so proud of you. Easy for you to say, Zara gasped between contractions. You are not the one feeling like your body is being torn apart. The doctor arrived, a competent man named Dr. Harris who immediately took charge of the situation. He examined Zara, declared everything was progressing normally, and settled in to wait. Mrs. Morrison arrived shortly after, bringing calm efficiency and words of encouragement. The labor lasted through the afternoon and into the evening. Austin refused to leave Zara's side, despite Mrs. Morrison suggesting he might want to wait outside as most men did. He held Zara's hand through every contraction, let her squeeze until he thought his bones might break, whispered encouragement, even when she told him she hated him for putting her through this. Finally, as the sun was setting, painting the room in shades of gold and red, their son was born. He came into the world with a strong, healthy cry, and Austin felt tears stream down his face as Dr. Harris placed the baby, cleaned and wrapped in a blanket, into Zara's arms. "You did it," Austin said, his voice breaking. "You did it, my love. He is perfect." "He has your nose," Zara said, her own tears falling as she looked down at their son. "And he is so beautiful." Austin leaned down to kiss her forehead, then gently touched one finger to the baby's tiny hand. Immediately, the little fingers closed around his, and Austin felt something in his heart crack wide open. "Hello, son," he whispered. "Welcome to the world. I am your father, and I promise I will spend every day of my life making sure you know you are loved." They named him James Austin Garrett, after Austin's grandfather, a man Austin had admired deeply. Little James was a good baby, healthy and strong, with his mother's green eyes and his father's dark hair. Austin was besotted from the first moment, amazed that he and Zara had created this perfect little person. The first few weeks were exhausting, full of sleepless nights and constant feedings, learning how to care for this tiny, helpless creature. But Austin and Zara worked together, supporting each other through the difficult moments, celebrating every small milestone. When James smiled for the first time, they both cried. When he laughed, they felt like the richest people in the world. Life settled into a new rhythm, one that included a baby and all the chaos that came with him. The ranch continued to prosper, and Austin hired additional help so he could spend more time with his family. He would come in from the fields to find Zara nursing James in the rocking chair he had made for her, sunlight streaming through the windows. And he would think that this right here, was everything he had ever wanted. James grew quickly, as children do. Before Austin knew it, his son was crawling, then walking, then running everywhere on chubby toddler legs. The house was filled with laughter, and the sound of little feet and toys scattered across every surface. It was messy and loud and absolutely perfect. When James was 2 years old, Zara discovered she was pregnant again. This time, Austin was slightly less terrified, having been through it once before. But he was no less attentive, no less determined to make sure Zara had everything she needed. Their daughter, Margaret Claire Garrett, was born in the spring, a tiny thing with a cap of dark hair and her father's serious eyes. James was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to help with everything, and Austin spent considerable time teaching his son how to be gentle with the new baby. The years passed in a blur of happiness. The ranch grew more successful, becoming one of the larger operations in the territory. Austin and Zara's family grew too. After Margaret came another son, Thomas, and then 2 more daughters, Sarah and Catherine, named after Zara's mother. The house was expanded again and again to accommodate the growing family. What had started as a small 2-bedroom structure became a sprawling home with enough space for everyone, filled with the noise and love of a large family. Zara thrived as a mother, patient and kind but firm when needed. Austin was the father he had always wanted to be, present and engaged, teaching his children how to ride and rope and work the land, but also reading to them at night and listening to their dreams and fears. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Austin arranged for his mother-in-law, Mrs. Morrison, to watch the children so he could take Zara on a picnic, just the 2 of them. They rode out to a spot by the creek where wildflowers grew in profusion, and they spread a blanket and ate the meal Zara had packed. 10 years, Zara said, lying back on the blanket, looking up at the sky. "Can you believe it has been 10 years since I stepped off that stage with a black eye and you promised no one would ever hurt me again?" "And I have kept that promise," Austin said, lying beside her, taking her hand in his. You have kept every promise you ever made to me, Zara said, turning to look at him. You gave me a home, a family, a life I never dared to dream I could have. You showed me what love really looks like, what it means to be cherished and valued. You healed parts of me I thought were broken beyond repair. You did the same for me, Austin said. I was just existing before you came, going through the motions, never really living. You brought light into my life, Zara. You and our children. You are the reason I wake up every morning grateful to be alive. They kissed there under the Oklahoma sky. Two people who had found each other against impossible odds, who had built a life together from nothing but hope and determination and love. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had sent me back that day? Zara asked. If you had taken one look at my bruised face and decided I was too much trouble? Never, Austin said firmly. From the moment I saw you, I knew you were meant to be mine. I knew I would do whatever it took to keep you safe and make you happy. And I would make the same choice every single day for the rest of my life. Even knowing all the chaos that came with me, Zara teased. 5 children, sleepless nights, a house that is never quite clean, a wife who sometimes burns dinner. Especially knowing all that, Austin said, pulling her close. Because that chaos, that beautiful, messy, wonderful chaos is my life, our life, and I would not change a single thing about it. They stayed out by the creek until the sun began to set, talking about everything and nothing, remembering the early days of their marriage, dreaming about the future. They talked about James, who at 10 years old was already showing signs of becoming a fine rancher like his father. They talked about Margaret, 8 years old and as fierce as her mother, already declaring she would never marry and would run her own ranch someday. They talked about Thomas, Sarah, and little Catherine, each one unique and special in their own way. I want more, Zara said suddenly. Austin looked at her in surprise. More children. Zara, you are 32 years old. 5 children is plenty. I am not talking about more children, Zara said, laughing. Though I would not be opposed if it happened, I am talking about more time, more years with you, more memories to make. I want to grow old with you, Austin. I want to see our children grown and settled. I want to meet our grandchildren. I want 50 more anniversaries just like this one. That is a lot of picnics, Austin said, but his voice was thick with emotion. Then you better start planning them now, Zara said. They rode home as the stars began to appear, and their children came running out to meet them, all talking at once about their day, demanding attention. Austin scooped up Catherine, now 3 years old, and spun her around while she shrieked with delight. Zara gathered Margaret and Sarah close, listening to their excited chatter about the dolls they had been playing with. Later, after the children were all in bed and the house was finally quiet, Austin and Zara sat together on the porch, watching the stars and listening to the sounds of the prairie at night. Thank you, Austin said. For what? Zara asked. For answering my advertisement. For taking a chance on a stranger. For getting on that stage and traveling all the way to Oklahoma, even though you must have been terrified. For being brave enough to step down from that stage and trust me to keep you safe. For building this life with me. For everything. Zara leaned her head against his shoulder. Thank you for seeing past the bruises to the person underneath. For keeping your promise. For loving me even when I did not think I deserved to be loved. For being the best husband and father I could have ever hoped for. They sat there in comfortable silence. 2 people who had found their way to each other through darkness and pain, who had built something beautiful and lasting from the ashes of their pasts. Inside the house, their children slept peacefully, safe and loved. The ranch around them was quiet. The cattle settled for the night, everything right with their world. Austin thought back to that day 10 years ago when he had stood outside the general store in Guthrie, nervous and uncertain, waiting for a woman he had never met. He thought about the moment the stage door had opened and Zara had stepped down, bruised and frightened but still standing, still hoping for something better. He thought about the rage he had felt at the sight of her black eye, the protective instinct that had surged through him, the promise he had made without even thinking about whether he could keep it. No one will ever hurt you again. It had been the truest promise he had ever made. And every day for the past 10 years, he had worked to keep it, not just by protecting her from physical harm, but by building a life where she felt safe, where she could heal, where she could flourish into the amazing woman and mother she had become. "What are you thinking about?" Zara asked. "I am thinking about how lucky I am," Austin said. "How different my life could have been if you had chosen someone else's advertisement, or if you had decided not to come west at all." "It was not luck," Zara said. "It was fate. We were always meant to find each other, Austin." "I truly believe that." "Then I am grateful to fate," Austin said, kissing the top of her head, "for bringing me you." The years continued to pass, marked by the changing of seasons, by birthdays and holidays, by the small and large moments that make up a life. James grew into a fine young man, taking over more and more of the ranch work, showing a natural aptitude for cattle management. Margaret did not end up running her own ranch, but instead fell in love with the town doctor's son and married at 20, though she made sure her husband understood she would always speak her mind. Thomas followed in his father's footsteps, steady and reliable, the kind of son any man would be proud to have. Sarah surprised everyone by showing a talent for art, spending hours sketching the prairie and the animals. Austin built her a small studio where she could work, and her paintings began to sell in Oklahoma City galleries. Catherine, the baby of the family, grew up to be a teacher, opening a small school in Guthrie where she taught reading and arithmetic to children from the surrounding ranches. Austin and Zara watched their children grow and leave home one by one, felt the house grow quieter, adjusted to having time for just the two of them again. They took trips together, traveling to places Zara had always wanted to see. They sat on the porch in the evenings and talked about the grandchildren that were beginning to arrive, about the legacy they were leaving behind. On their 25th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Children and grandchildren filled the house that had once seemed so small, and Austin looked around at the faces of the people he loved most in the world and felt his heart might burst from the fullness of it. James stood to make a toast, raising his glass high. "To my parents, who have shown all of us what true love looks like, who have built this ranch, this family, this life through hard work and dedication and unwavering commitment to each other. You have given us the greatest gift any child could ask for, which is the example of a marriage built on respect, trust, and genuine affection. We love you both, and we hope you know how grateful we are for everything you have done for us." Everyone cheered and drank, and Zara wiped tears from her eyes while Austin cleared his throat roughly, trying to maintain his composure. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, after the grandchildren had been tucked in and the dishes had been washed and put away, Austin and Zara stood alone in the kitchen where they had shared that first awkward meal together 25 years ago. "You remember that pumpkin pie you made?" Austin asked. "The one where I helped you cut up the pumpkin, the one where you told me you were falling in love with me," Zara said with a smile. "Yes, I remember. How could I forget? I think about that night sometimes," Austin said. "About how scared you were, how uncertain I was, how neither of us really knew if this would work. And look at us now. 25 years, 5 children, more grandchildren than I can keep track of, and I love you more today than I did then." "I love you too," Zara said, moving into his arms. Thank you for keeping your promise, Austin, for making sure that no one ever hurt me again, not just in the physical sense, but in every way that matters. You have spent our entire marriage making me feel safe and cherished and loved. That is the greatest gift you could have ever given me." They danced there in the quiet kitchen, swaying to music only they could hear. Two people who had found each other when they both needed someone most, who had built a beautiful life together against all odds. Austin thought about the young man he had been, standing nervously in Guthrie waiting for a mail-order bride, hoping for companionship and maybe a bit of help around the ranch. He had gotten so much more than he had ever dreamed possible. He had gotten a partner, a best friend, a love that had sustained him through 25 years, and would sustain him for however many more years they had together. The ranch would continue after they were gone, passed down through the generations they had created. Their children and grandchildren would work this land, would live in this house, would carry forward the values Austin and Zara had instilled in them. It was a legacy worth being proud of, a life well lived. But more than any of that, more than the ranch or the cattle or the material success they had achieved, what Austin was most proud of was simple and profound. He had taken a frightened, hurt woman who stepped off a stage with a black eye, and he had kept his promise to her. No one had ever hurt her again. Not because Austin had physically protected her from all danger, which would have been impossible, but because he had created a life for her where she felt safe enough to heal, strong enough to thrive, loved enough to flourish into the incredible person she had always been meant to be. And in return, she had given him everything. A home, a family, a purpose, a love that had transformed him from a lonely rancher going through the motions of living into a man who woke up every day grateful for the gift of another sunrise, another chance to be with the woman who had become his whole world. As they stood there in the kitchen holding each other close, Austin whispered, "I would do it all again. Every moment, every challenge, every hard day, I would do it all again just to end up right here with you." "Me too," Zara whispered back, without hesitation, without doubt, "me too." Outside, the Oklahoma night was vast and starry, the prairie stretching away in all directions, the ranch they had built together standing solid and strong against the darkness. Inside, their family slept peacefully, generations connected by blood and love, by the choices two brave people had made 25 years ago when they decided to trust each other enough to try. And in the kitchen, in the heart of the home they had made together, Austin and Zara Garrett held each other close and knew with absolute certainty that they had found what everyone searches for and few ever find. They had found their home, their place, their person. They had found love in its truest, most enduring form, and they had found it together, exactly as they were always meant to do.